sure your mics are on. Good morning. We will call to order the March 20th, 2018 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this point, I'd like to invite Pastor Kyle Bailey from the Freedom Church up. He will lead us in the invocation. That'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by myself. And we will begin this morning with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders. Would everyone please rise?
Heavenly Father, we just thank you this morning for the opportunity to pray for those who are in authority. Your word instructs all of us to pray for those who are in positions of authority, that you have instituted these individuals to be servants in our community. And Lord, you instruct the church to pray for each and every one of these individuals so that we may live a quiet and peaceful life in all godliness and holiness. And Lord, we just pray for our county. Lord, we pray for this meeting and the items that will be discussed, the decisions that will be made. Lord, that you would have your hand guiding each and every part of the process. Lord, we ask, God, that you would continue to utilize this county as a place where your presence is actively working among the hearts and lives of those living here. And God, I just consider it a privilege to be able to pray for those that you've placed in these positions this morning, that they might bring glory to you in all that they do. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Bailey. For those of you who were sitting here a minute or two before the meeting began, you'll realize we're still working through some glitches with our new audio and visual equipment. So we would again ask everybody to indulge in some patience as our staff kind of works through all the glitches with that. Commissioners, obviously Commissioner Solari is out today. He's doing his duty to the community at the Constitutional Revision Commission. The county administrator has indicated to me that there was Commissioner Solari did not have anything he wished to be tabled until his return, so we are able to move forward with the full agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We have agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 4-0. That takes us to proclamations and presentations. The first is a presentation of a proclamation designating April 1st through April 30, 2018 as Water Conservation Month in Indian River County. This will be presented by Commissioner Adams, and we have Miss Abby Johnson here from the St. Johns River Water Management District to receive it. Good morning, and Commissioner Adams.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to read a proclamation designating April 1st through April 30th, 2018 as Water Conservation Month in Indian River County. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas the state of Florida, water management districts in Indian River County are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation, and whereas Indian River County and the state of Florida has designated April, typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, Florida's Water Conservation Month, to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas Indian River County has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water. And now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, that the month of April 2018 be designated as Water Conservation Month in Indian River County, and all citizens and business are encouraged to help protect our precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. Adopted this 20th day of March 2018 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Welcome, Abby. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And if you'd like to say a few words about you guys, what you had going on for Water Conservation Month.
Well, thank you very much. Again, my name is Abby Johnson. I'm with St. Johns River Water Management District. I am the Intergovernmental Coordinator. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you for being such great partners. This month, for the celebration of Water Conservation Month, we engage most all 119 of our municipalities, and we encourage them to issue proclamations in support of Water Conservation Month. Those proclamations are sent to Tallahassee. You're part of a statewide count. So it's not just Indian River County. We're sending the message that every drop counts statewide. It's a huge measure. I know it sounds very simple. We just acknowledge it, and we encourage everyone to engage their citizens. But it's a really, really important message, whether it is setting a timer when you take a shower. Some of us like long showers. Or before you wash your car, if you wash it on the lawn so it's going right back into the ground. You know, very simple things, but quite honestly, every drop counts. That's the message we want to drive home. We, in coordination with most of our utilities, I see Mr. Burke here, we all work together for long-term planning. So it's not just the current generation. We're planning for future generations to come, your grandkids, so we can all have plenty of water to drink. A lot of great fishing. I realized I moved down to the true sportsman's paradise when I came this far south. So there are a lot of great activities to engage in, and we just want to make sure that we're all protecting the natural resource, and we thank you very much.
You know, Abby, with 119 proclamations, you're going to be pretty busy the next couple of weeks, I guess.
Fortunately, I only cover 5 counties.
Oh, okay. And I know what you mean about a long shower, because when you have a head of hair like me, it takes quite a bit of time to, you know, really get it washed and conditioned and rinsed and all that kind of stuff. It just takes time. I don't know. All right, well, Abby, come on up and get the proclamation. Thank you.
Me too. On 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
You're gonna have some photo album. 119 proclamation.
One of the more important parts, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Proclamations will be on our website. This photograph will end up on our Twitter page. So it's not a competition, if you want to say, but you're ahead.
Thank you.
Where we like to be is in first place, right? Yeah, all right. Next is a presentation of a proclamation designating the week of March 18 through 24, 2018 as National Surveyors Week. This will be presented by Commissioner Flesher, and we have Chris Demeter with, he's a local surveyor with Kimley Horn, and I think a few others. So why don't y'all, all the surveyors come on up? Y'all don't be shy, come on.
The whole room, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Flesher.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. And this is an annual thing we do, and I'd like to take this opportunity just for a public safety notice. These fine individuals who we care about so much are out there, many of them inside, but some of them are out there in the field. And I see only one is wearing orange. Generally, they wear orange or some sort of electric color. And I ask the public to just be cognizant of their presence. And again, they are a likable group, and they're doing great work for us and for all of you. So just take notice and drive with due care as they are surveying the lands in many ways. So just thank you for that. Without further ado, I'd like to present the proclamation designating the week of March 18th through 24th, 2018 as National Surveyors Week. Whereas land surveyors are counted among the founding leaders of our country and our county, and were instrumental in the formation of the layout of property boundaries in the United States, providing our citizens the opportunity to enjoy the American dream of property ownership. Whereas United States Presidents George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Abraham Lincoln all served as surveyors, contributing to the historical mapping of America in its early years. And whereas the surveying profession requires special education, training, the knowledge of mathematics and related physical and applied sciences, and the requirements of law for evidence. And whereas surveyors are uniquely qualified and licensed, determined, and describe land and water boundaries for the management of natural resources and protection of private and public property rights. And whereas the continual advancements of instrumentation have required the surveyor to not only be able to understand the implement the methods of the past, but to learn and employ modern technology in finding solutions to meet the challenges of time. Whereas the citizens of Indian River County recognize the valuable contributions of the surveying profession to the history, development, and quality of life throughout our country, and make the important decision based upon the knowledge and expertise of licensed surveyors and mappers. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of March 18th through March 24th, 2018 be designated as National Surveyors Week in Indian River County, and the board encourages that the citizens to recognize the many contributions and the ongoing dedication of surveyors to our community and throughout the United States. Duly adopted this 20th day of March 2018 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Yes, gentlemen, you are well appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, members. My name is Chris Demeter. I'm a local surveyor. I've been here for 33 years. I'm a current member and past president of the Indian River chapter of the Florida Surveying and Mapping Society. And I am very honored to accept this proclamation on behalf of the whole surveying community. We have a great group of dedicated professionals and technicians that run their businesses and make their livings and raise their families here, and we're very proud to be part of the fabric of the community. As individuals, we volunteer our time to those charities and needs that we're passionate about, from Habitat for Humanity to coaching, Little League and baseball and different sport endeavors. As a local chapter, our society helps educate students. We judge science fairs, and we have fundraising events to raise money to adopt a family during the holidays, and also we provide scholarship opportunities to aspiring college students. So when you become a professional surveyor and mapper, you operate under a code of ethics, and the overriding tenet is to protect the public, and that is what we do. We're proud of what we do. We're proud to be part of this county, and we take a lot of pride in receiving this proclamation today. At the last minute, our county surveyor provided me some more data he'd like to share. Just a couple of little fun facts. The surveyors in history are George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Lewis and Clark were surveyors, Daniel Boone, Henry David Thoreau, and from the Mason and Dixon from the Mason-Dixon line. So all these historical figures that you know for something else were also surveyors. One challenge we have moving forward is to be able able to educate and bring in enough surveyors in the future. Some of these statistics are interesting. Right now there's 2,580 licensed surveyors in Florida. 112 of them are females. Age 60 and over, there's 1,100. There's 1,200 between the ages of 40 and 60. And then below that, from 18 to 40, there's only 183. So we try to get the word out, we try to educate, and things like this are wonderful to do that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all come on up.
Okay, right here, on three. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Chairman, as the surveyors leave the room, I'd like to pose one question to any of the surveyors that maybe they could send me the answer to this. In Tallahassee, if somebody could give me the actual street address location of the Meridian in Tallahassee, I scouted out when I was up there before, thought I knew where it was, but it'd just be kind of a neat opportunity to see where it's at. And I know it's there somewhere, but I have not been able to find it.
They created a new park up there and put everything right in there.
Okay.
There's a brass line.
Yes, so I've been to Cascades Park, but I was trying to find the monument in the park. It's great, great stormwater project they did with that. Great, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day. All right, I'll be presenting the next proclamation, and this is a proclamation designating April 15, 2018 as Peter and Susan O'Brien's 29th wedding anniversary. And I think something else is happening that day too, but I don't know. Michael, Kent, why don't you come on up? And this will be a presentation designating April 15, 2018 as Jackie Robinson Day. Whereas April 15, 2018 will mark the 71st anniversary of Jackie Robinson making his major league debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers as he broke the color barrier in 1947 to become the first African American to play Major League Baseball. And whereas Jackie Robinson spent 9 spring trainings, 1948 to 1956, at Dodgertown, Vero Beach, and the Dodgers advanced to the World Series 5 times in those years. And whereas in 1948, Dodgertown became the first and only integrated spring training site in the South. And whereas Major and Minor League Baseball celebrates Jackie Robinson Day nationally each April 15th, and whereas Mr. Pat O'Connor, Minor League Baseball President and CEO, said, Minor League Baseball is proud to be part of this annual celebration in Vero Beach as we play a game at historic Dodgertown to honor him. And whereas the 5th annual Jackie Robinson celebration game will take place on Sunday, April 15th, 2018 in Holman Stadium when the St. Lucie Mets host the Dunedin Blue Jays to benefit a worthy cause, the United Way of Indian River County. And whereas the cost of this minor league baseball game is kept low so that it can be a true community-wide celebration. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board designates April 15, 2018 as Jackie Robinson Day and hereby congratulates Major League Baseball on its work and success in Indian River County over the past 70 years. Adopted this 20th day of March, 2018, signed, endorsed by all 5 county commissioners. Michael, tell us about the big day coming up.
First, thank you very much for the proclamation. This is actually our first kind of public rollout. I mean, people have been talking, but tickets are just about to go on sale. We're about 3.5 weeks out, so we thank you for that. You hit most of the highlights. Great game again. It's been decided by minor league baseball that going forward, the St. Lucie Mets will always be the home team, and it will float then amongst who their opponents will be. This year, a team affiliated with the Toronto Major League team, the Blue Jays. The one difference this year on the game, and we'll give you the dispensation this year if need be, Commissioner, from being present. It's a special day for you too, is that the game will not be a night game, it'll be an afternoon game. Game time is 1:42, and 42 is of course in honor of Jackie Robinson's number. The gates that day will open at 11:30. It's going to be very much the same atmosphere and same activities that go along with the game that we've had for the prior Jackie Robinson games, but it is a day game. Therefore, the only thing that's going to be different is we won't have fireworks because it won't be dark. As in the past, we encourage young people to wear their uniforms, and if young men and women come to the third base side, the concourse area, at 1 o'clock, they'll be moved onto the field so that they can be out there on the field where Jackie Robinson and the other Dodger greats played. They'll be there for the introduction of the players and the national anthem, and it's kind of neat for them to be able to line the first and third base lines for that activity. The tickets for this, as in the past, become available on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, the 21st. That's tomorrow, yes? Coffee's starting to kick in.
There you go.
Become available tomorrow at all Seacoast Bank locations in both Indian River and St. Lucie counties. Also available at the Marine Bank locations here in Indian River County, or at historic Dodgertown, or at United Way. You can also get them online as they were available last year. They'll be on our website, the UnitedWayIRC.org website. I have to thank again Historic Dodgertown, plays such a critical role in this, who along with our other sponsors, Massey Romans Wealth Management, and a newcomer to the community that has stepped up, Franken's Energy, is also a presenting sponsor, but they, along with Historic Dodgertown, are making this possible. Tickets are only $6 if bought in advance, which is very reasonable for the family, and $8 on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday just before the game. Outside of that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but it's a good time. Everybody who was there last year knows we darn near filled the stadium. I think we had about as close to 7,000 folks in there as you can get. It was pretty cool, and probably it's been quite a while since Holman Stadium had seen that many bodies, and we hope to do that again, and it's just a lot of fun. We thank you for your recognition today. We hope everybody comes out and joins us. And before I leave the podium, I'll just look to my partner in crime. This is Chance Morrow, my new marketing director. Did I leave anything out? Okay. With that, I thank you again.
Keeping a close eye.
I tell you, I need a keeper.
Yeah. Well, Michael, you know, it's really true. It's about the kids. And 2 years ago, my wife and I had been invited to throw the first pitch out. And when I went home and told her, you know, I was all excited. I thought it was pretty cool. And she said, there's no way on earth I'm going to do that. So she picked one of her 6th grade students, and I picked I think he was 11 or 12-year-old from the Gifford baseball team. And so they were our substitute pitchers and came in. And just the smiles on those kids' faces to be out there and holding the ball and, you know, doing that first pitch thing, just it made their life, I think, you know, to be out there. So it is really cool. It's about the kids, and it's a great family event, like you said. And so we hope not only do you sell out every seat, but you fill the berms as well this year.
I wish we could, and that's actually, I need to dispel it. The fact is it's full of fire ants, and there are other issues, so we have it's a problem every year. We have to put people out there. We remember when we could go out there. Unfortunately, we can't put butts on the berms right now. I will add one thing, and that is we are really working hard also to have a lot of quality food vendors there. Clearly, it's available in the concourse, but we're going to have a lot of other vendors, so we're going to have more food available and the usual beverages for the adults as well. But thank you guys again for your proclamation. We appreciate it.
Great, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Come on up, Mike.
You want to go up there? No. Okay.
Okay, moving on. There are no minutes to approve. That takes us to informational items. Two retirements. Marla Goodman is retiring from the Library Services Division with 12 years of service. And Edward McCullers is retiring from the Department of Utility Services with 21 years of service. So Marla and Ed, we appreciate all of your years of service to the community. And then moving on to the consent agenda. Commissioners, does anybody wish to pull a consent agenda item for further discussion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to have a consent agenda item pulled for further discussion?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Adams to approve consent as presented. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 4-0. There are no constitutional officers, so we now go to public items. The first is a public hearing, and this is a request by Eugene J. Kane Jr. to rezone plus or minus 2.009 acres from RS1, which is single-family residential district up to 1 unit per acre, to RS3, single-family residential district up to 3 units per acre, and plus or minus 4.827 acres from RS1, single-family residential, to Con 2, which is Estuarine Wetlands Conservation District, up to 1 unit per 40 acres, for property located north and adjacent to Round Island Riverside Park and west of Highway A1A. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The parties to this proceeding are Indian River County and Eugene J. Kane Jr., the applicant. At this point, I'll ask the commissioners to disclose if they have had any ex parte communications, site visits, or independent investigations. Commissioner Flesher.
None that I'm aware of, sir.
Commissioner Adams.
Nope.
Commissioner Zork.
None that I'm aware of.
And I have had no ex parte or site visits. Commissioners, could you please confirm that you have an open mind and are able to base your decision on the evidence presented in applicable law? And we'll start with Commissioner Zork.
I can and will.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Commissioner Flesher.
I can and will.
And I also will have an open mind and can base my decision on the evidence presented. If there is anyone here in the audience that is going to speak or even might think that you might like to speak about this, would you please rise now and the clerk will swear you in. Thank you. We will start with a presentation by county staff, and Stan Bowling, the Community Development Director, is here. Good morning, Stan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. This request is for rezoning of a little bit under 7 acres located on the South Barrier Island on the west side of State Road A1A. You can see from the aerial here, A1A. And there are really two portions of this rezoning. One is the western portion, about 2/3 of the property, which has been shown by a recent environmental survey to be estuarine wetlands. That would be rezoned to conservation. And then the upland property here, shown in red, would be rezoned to RS3, single family, at 3 units per acre. You can see from this aerial, it's immediately north of Round Island Riverside, and there are other single-family homes, some large homes, and then also some single-family subdivisions in that particular area. And the purpose is to secure the zoning necessary to develop the uplands portion, just over 2 acres of the property. And again, for that to go to RS3 zoning district for single-family development, The other portion, again, is to put into place in the zoning atlas the conservation status, the conservation zoning for the estuarine wetlands. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed at a public hearing this request and voted unanimously to recommend that the board approve the request. In terms of the future land use map, much like the zoning map, it indicates conservation, and really this is a broad brush along the lagoon, on both sides of the lagoon. Until we get an estuarine wetland survey, we show this as conservation. The specific boundaries are determined once we get a particular survey. So this is shown to be conservation now. And again, the estuarine wetlands survey shows where the actual boundaries are. And that particular part of our process is reflected in the future land use element policy 1.7. That an environmental survey will actually determine the boundaries of that particular designation for conservation. It's similar with our zoning districts. The RS1 zoning district is essentially a holding zone type of zoning district along both sides of the lagoon, and based on an estuarine wetlands boundary survey, determining where is actually going to become conservation, what becomes uplands, and that's been done in this particular case. And again, the western, approximately 2/3 of the property is estuarine wetlands. The remainder toward A1A is uplands. And you can see from this particular map the kind of predominance of RS3 zoning, even the park itself and other properties on the east side of A1A. But we also see that overall along the South Barrier Island, many of the properties, actually predominance of properties, are zoned RS3. Some are still zoned RS1 as well. And again, for the proposed zoning, Con 2, so it would have the maximum protection zoning here on the estuarine wetlands property, essentially no development of units, certainly, on that portion of the property, and then the upland portion could be developed with single family. Again, just to show you the pattern of zoning on the South Barrier Island, you can see in the yellow here the predominance of RS3, also some conservation properties that are publicly owned, and again, RS1 properties where there's not been a survey submitted for estuarine wetlands. In terms of looking at this rezoning request, a number of criteria were analyzed, including concurrency, consistency with the comprehensive plan, environmental impact, and compatibility. With respect to concurrency, we look at a number of factors, including transportation, water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste. In this particular case, we didn't actually have to do a concurrency test because there's no net gain in the number of units overall, looking strictly at the zoning itself. But again, as you all are aware, if and when there's a development project proposed, there will actually be a project-specific concurrency test at that time. In terms of the consistency with our comprehensive plan, there are a number of policies that this request satisfies that are particularly applicable. This is within the urban service area, the property, rezoning and going to an L1 land use for the upland portion. That's all consistent with surrounding properties. And again, the submittal of the wetlands survey is really the determining factor here. With respect to environmental impacts, there would be no difference in the environmental regulations that might apply to development of the upland portion, whether it's RS1 or RS3. And in fact, actually putting the western 2/3 of the site into conservation actually provides more environmental protection. So no adverse environmental impacts from the rezoning request. In terms of compatibility, as I'd mentioned before, the RS3 was proposed to go to RS3 would be consistent with the other upland zoning properties, and the conservation property up against the lagoon would be consistent with surrounding properties as well. So our staff's conclusion is that the proposed request for RS3 and conservation zoning is compatible with surrounding uses, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, it meets the concurrency test, and there'd be no additional environmental impacts. Staff supports the request, and staff's recommendation and the recommendation of the P&Z is that the board approve the rezoning request from RS1 to RS3 and Conservation 2 by adopting the ordinance that's attached to your agenda item. Be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Stan. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Commissioner Zork.
I have one. Stan, do you have, I don't see in the backup, the actual survey line that was, somebody went out there and actually marked where this would be at, but when you look at the blue line and the red line, that could be 10 feet wide, so I'm sure you have a more accurate.
We do.
document that's just
And
not.
you did see the number of decimal places we went to on
Right.
on the acreage. The applicant, the engineer, Scott McGuire's here, and he has, actually, we do have a copy in-house, and environmental planning staff confirmed out in the field, as did other agencies, that this is the
And
approved
that would
environmental
actually be the
survey.
controlling.
That would be a controlling document for the next step, if they intend to develop it, to use the exact survey during the development review plan process.
Thank you.
Stan, two things. One is just to confirm that there will be not only water, but more importantly, in my mind, sewer service to this site. Is that correct?
Right, and that's provided by the City of Vero Beach, and again, I can let the project engineer, go into that, but they would actually be dealing with the City of Vero Beach to get those
Right.
services.
Okay, but I just want to make sure that sewer was available there.
That's my understanding.
And secondly, I don't know, maybe either you or the applicant, but are they looking to just put one house there, a larger estate style, or are they going to break it up and put multiple homes on the?
Yeah, I would suspect that you could get maybe a 4 or 5 lot subdivision with a very small cul-de-sac, but we've not seen any particular plan, but this zoning would allow for something like that.
Okay, good, thank you. Any further commissioners?
One last, would they be allowed to have a path through the rear portion, for an observation area or something like that?
Right, the conservation zoning would keep them from developing that as a lot or unit with intense development, but you could get a boardwalk or a pathway through part of the wetlands area if you met the wetland permitting requirements of both the county and the other agencies, so it's possible.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
And Commissioner Adams, do you have any questions of staff? Okay, thank you. At this point, there'll be a presentation by the applicant. I think he's represented here by Mr. Scott McGuire. Good morning, Scott.
Morning.
That's not on my list yet. Oh. Hang on just a minute.
You have one page.
I'm going by what you gave us. Presentation by staff, presentation by the applicant. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. We'll go back and open the public hearing. And we've just completed staff presentation of the public hearing. Thank you, staff. And now presentation by the applicant in the public hearing. Good morning.
Scott McGuire with Knight McGuire and Associates, representing Mr. Kane this morning. Mostly I'm just here to answer questions. I think it's a pretty straightforward application. We're just sort of bringing into conformance with everything in the general area in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So yes, water and sewer is available by the city. Any development down there would be required to hook up. There is no change in riparian rights with this, so there are riparian rights with the property. So if eventually developed, then there would be the possibility of walkways, docks, access to the river. Other than that, if anybody has any further questions, love to answer them.
Scott, do you know, is it going to just be a large estate house, or is it going to be multiple units? Just
There's
curious.
no plan by the current owner to develop.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to provide any input on this public hearing? Good morning.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, President of By Swan Consulting. I'm familiar with the land, I'm familiar with the project, and I think it's a good use of the property, and it's very low density, so I'm in full support of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to comment on this public hearing? Okay, staff, any final presentation? Is there any final presentation from the applicant? Nope. Okay, all the documents and evidence have been admitted into evidence and submitted to into the hands of the clerk. At that point, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Move staff recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork, to move forward with the staff recommendation. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 4-0. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next item is another public hearing. This is a transmittal public hearing for a county-initiated request to amend the text of the sanitary sewer sub-element for septic to sewer conversion and the associated text of the future land use element, and amend the text of the coastal management element for sea level rise and associated text of the future land use element of the county's comprehensive plan. This is legislative in nature, and once again, Mr. Stan Bowling. Good morning again, Stan.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you've gone over the topics that are covered by this, and this is a transmittal hearing, and in the process of amending the comprehensive plan text, the application actually for these have been already looked at by the Board of County Commissioners in terms of initiating the process. We've gone to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which supports all the amendments that are proposed. That was in February. This is the transmittal public hearing, and from here, if the board decides to transmit and continue the process for these amendments, it'll be sent to the state and regional review agencies. We'll get comments from them, and then come back to the Board of County Commissioners for a final hearing, which would probably be in June of this year. And if adopted, then these amendments would be transmitted to the state, and they would be part of our comprehensive plan. The purpose of these amendments are really twofold. The first one, and Mr. Chairman, if we could, I think it would make sense, and this worked pretty well, I think, in the Planning and Zoning Commission, if we could do the public hearing in two parts. Hear the presentation and get comments on the septic system and public sewer portion, and then do the sea level rise, and then the state likes us to transmit it all in one resolution, which is what we have in your backup. So what we'd like to do is proceed with this presentation and go over the septic to sewer type of items, take comment, and then go forward after that with the sea level rise, if that's okay with you.
That'd be fine. Yep.
Okay. So we'll be doing this in two parts, and what we'll be looking at is for each one of these, we have text amendments to the actual data and analysis section, and then the objectives and policies for both particular items. And again, the P&Z looked at both parts and recommended approval. There was one minor change to one of the portions of the sewer policies, and we incorporated that, staff incorporated that into what's being presented to you today. And I'll go over that when we get to that point. With respect to the septic to sewer conversion items, back in 2016, the board directed utility services staff to evaluate county-wide septic to sewer conversion plan. And the basic plan was kind of rolled out in phases. The first phase has already been accomplished. It was accomplished this last July with a comprehensive priority ranking plan and study and cost estimates for potential projects. This is really the second phase, which is to incorporate that ranking plan into the comprehensive plan. And this is one of those times where this is essentially like a feedback loop into the comp plan itself. So we're taking the opportunity to make this part of the county's comprehensive plan and getting the backup into the comprehensive plan itself, and then actually roll out some policies that are associated with that. The next steps in actually doing septic to sewer, phases 3 and 4, identifying financing options and doing public outreach, and then actually getting projects, priority projects implemented. So that will happen outside of the comprehensive plan process, obviously, to implement. In terms of the actual update that's in front of you, we've provided a lot of updates to the text part. Again, part of what we're looking to do, since we're not going to do a really large comprehensive plan update till after the census in 2020, we're trying to update a lot of the sections as we go, and we got a lot of help from utilities, services staff, and Department of Health staff, all along with both the policies and also the text updates. So you've seen a lot of those in these particular proposal, updating maps and so forth. And a few of the pages that I've highlighted here is where we've actually added in particular items on the septic to sewer study, which you all saw again last summer, and the priority projects, how that was done. And also adding a little more information to the physical limitations and some of the problems that we encounter with septic systems and some of the criteria that we want to have in place for converting from septic to sewer. So in terms of the actual objectives and policies, I'm just highlighting here some of the ones that are in there right now. We have already exceeded the 50% mark for having the number of existing units in the urban service area connected to sewer. We think we need to move that target to 2025 and update that and raise the bar a little bit to 60%. That's in the proposal. We also have references to the 35 priority projects that were identified as part of the study that was approved last year by the board. And we've identified some of the items that are in the study itself. We have a policy proposed in there requiring financial analysis for the projects and establishing a 2028 deadline of having at least 5 of the 35 priority subdivision projects done by that particular point in time. We also have a clarification that really lines up with practice and with the LDRs that address new subdivision projects in terms of when capacity exists. New subdivisions with 25 or more lots must connect to county reuse line. We've also added language committing the county to consider opportunities for funding septic to sewer projects and sewer connections. That was one statement that the P&Z wanted added in that policy, so we've done that. In Objective 7, we're reducing our target cap to try to make progress here by the year 2020 to have no more than 200 new septic system permits issued, again, for new homes. Clarifies, in Policy 7.1, clarifies a policy of removing a blanket exception for existing subdivisions to continue the use of septic systems. That'll give the board the flexibility to implement projects where sewer hookup may be mandatory for a particular project. That gives the board that flexibility. Also, in terms of some of the new policies that are proposed or being updated, we're encouraging a reporting system for maintenance and repair projects for septic systems, and also to upgrade older systems to the new standards. Right now, the state standards don't require pre-1983 systems to be upgraded. This would at least encourage that and put those kind of two items in the comp plan itself. We've also updated a number of minor things in terms of the references and so forth, and you see that throughout. In terms of our own kind of requirements for what really justifies or warrants a comprehensive plan change, a few changes in circumstances, substantial changes in circumstances have occurred, and really two of them. One, we've had approval now of a comprehensive septic to sewer study, and we actually have a way now of targeting and focusing in the comp plan itself based on that. And also we just have a lot of out-of-date references and statutes. That's part of the changes as well. So having these amendments go through are warranted and justified. The recommendation from staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission is that the board, after considering the presentation and any input, that they vote to transmit the amendments to the state and the region for their review and continue the process. And again, Mr. Chairman, after discussing the septic to sewer type of items, if we could, after that, then discuss the sea level rise items.
Very good. Thank you, Stan. Commissioners, any questions or comments of staff? Commissioner Zork?
Have a few. And I know, well, I don't believe any of these items that relate to the development. I'm looking at the Development Review Committee, but I see a few things on here that we don't know what they'll cost, like say 4.4 subdivisions over 25 lots must connect to a county reuse line. Well, what's the parameters? If it's within 1/8 of a mile, if it's in front of the property, if it's within 10 miles, you could add, $10,000 per unit cost if the connection of that is not more specified. And there's a number of other, odds and ends that I'm not an engineer, but I know enough that when I see something like that, that's going to cost somebody a significant amount of money.
Right. Good comment. So a couple of things. These are at policy level, so it's really in the land development regulations where we drill down into the criteria itself on some of these. And in policy 4.4, as you pointed out, we're actually adding a little flexibility to that particular one, because in practice and in the LDRs, first there's a determination, is there capacity? Is there a line to hook into? Is there capacity for reuse? So that's criteria that are in the LDRs already. So this change actually gives a little more flexibility, and that I think is probably a plus in terms of the way that in the development review process you actually make a determination. The rest of these, again, I think that the way that it's structured, we don't have requirements that are going to affect the specifics of development review process in these. We're basically updating those things. What we're really drilling down into here is what standards is the county going to set itself for actually going through and getting septic to sewer done, and which projects, where are we going to prioritize projects. But we put financial feasibility in these and that sort of thing. So that's really going to be more on the county side in terms of the projects. There could be things, this is a transmittal stage, we could forward the information to the committee. We might very well hear crickets, but it's something that we could because it is a lot. There is a lot.
I'd rather do it and give the opportunity, because so moving down to 4.8, Objective 7, reduce the number of new septic systems the county will permit annually by 2020, which is 2 years away, from 450 to 200. So that means you're going to be closing off places like Vero Lake Estates, Vero Highlands, Sebastian Highlands, where there's no sewer, and that going from 450 to 200 is going to have, if I'm reading that correctly, it says reduce it from 450 to 200 within 2 years. You're really placing a number of existing communities in a no-build opportunity for people that own a lot of those properties, or that, you know, if you look at Vero Lake Estates and Sebastian Highlands and Vero Highlands, it provides somebody where you can still buy a lot for under 20 grand, build your house and be in the 250, 275 range. So that's how we're able to meet some of our workforce housing needs. If you cut that more than in half, that's going to just drive up the back-end cost of housing for everyone.
Right.
And not to say it's not a noble goal, but it's, you know, how many vacant parcels are there that you could put a septic on? Not advocating you should go out and build all those tomorrow, but the realistic side of that, of going from 450 to 200, that's a significant change. And I don't know what our annual number is currently. That would probably help some, but you know, we've been coming out of the economic downturn. So if you look back over the last 3 years, that's probably not good data, because 3 years ago, the market was still not turning out a lot of units. You'd have to take something more closer near term, the recent 12 months, to see and compare that with your 06, 07 peak numbers to see, of going from 450 to 200, what will that do to that marketplace?
Right. And again, it is a target. Actually, the county doesn't issue the permits themselves. It's actually Department of Health, and they have their own standards. So it is meant to be a target for us. It's not going to be a regulatory.
Well, some people will read that as a policy objective and say that's what we need to adhere to, because that's what we moved forward. So there's two ways, depending on where you're at on an issue, how you want to move it forward. But if we could move it forward, but also send it to the committee for comments and review, I think that would at least give those group of folks an opportunity to give us some additional guidance or recommendations before we get to the final.
And we may have some, if somebody's here from the Health Department can give some numbers as well. That might help you with that.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Dunn. I'm the environmental manager for the Indian River County Health Department. And we haven't issued over 200 new permits in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So including last year's numbers and going back 12 months. We actually issue more repair permits, over 800.
So do you know what our peak number was for septic in the 06, 07?
We weren't over 200 new.
Never over 200?
Right.
Because we were at 38.
In 2003 and 4, we were higher,
Really?
but not in 6 and 7.
Okay.
And I can get those numbers for you. I don't have them
Okay.
with me now, but
And I don't know if anybody knows off the top of her head, but I would guess between Vero Lake Estates, Sebastian Highlands, and Vero Highlands, you probably have, 3,000 vacant parcels, ballparkish. So again, if the committee could chime in and give us some answers. I'm just surprised that, I know if you go back 5, 6 years ago, the market was pretty much, there wasn't much of a market 6 years ago, so.
But even last year, it was 180 permits, and it was, so
Right.
we weren't over 200 last year.
Okay.
And I think
Hopefully we'll be over 200 this year.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that it's a goal and not a regulation. So it's not as if the health department's going to say, okay, here's number 201 application for a septic tank. You can't build a septic tank.
Right, we can't deny septic tank permits based on a policy.
Right, and the idea, that's an objective, so that gives us a target, a measurable target to try to hit, and we believe that the policies should get us there, but that would be actually part of the evaluation, part of the feedback loop, is are these policies, do we need to change the target, or do we need to change policies or add policies, but it's not a regulation.
So we'll have an opportunity, if it goes to the committee and they bring back suggestions to us, we can alter our final work product.
You certainly could.
One other one where, let me get back to the right page here, was the one where it had the listed of the subdivisions that were prioritized for, this is attachment 2, that says, using the methodology described in this study, the top 35 ranking subdivisions have been identified with the highest overall rating, largest impact to the Indian River Lagoon. And some of these on here, unless it's a duplicate name, like Verona Estates, is that the same as Verona off 90th Avenue? It's a different Verona?
Right, it
Okay.
would have to be, yeah, and that's on sewer. That-
Okay, right, that's what I was thinking, Verona was on, was on sewer.
Verona Trace, I think, is the name of that.
Okay, all right. Similar front-end name. Do we have, if you asked a weather person 6 weeks ago, would the Northeast experience 4 back-to-back Northeasters in a 30-day period, they would have said it's never happened. But we're going to forecast out 100 years, and they're going to guess that our sea level rise is going to be, does anybody, what's the number they're projecting for us for the 100-year outmark? Do we know?
I would not even try to guess 100 years out. The divergence of the projections are, I could tell you,
Right.
3
I mean,
feet.
it wouldn't be, it would be a number that somebody else generates, it
Right.
says.
Right.
Because when you look at what FEMA's done to the freeboard number and raised that up consistently, I think we're way ahead of the curve on a lot of elevation issues related to new construction. So I'm not a big sea level rise believer. I know the ocean changes over time. I think it's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone neutral. So,
Commissioner Zorg, I think we're gonna just kind of focus on the septic to sewer part.
okay, that's the other part.
And then get to the
Sure, thank
sea
you.
level thing next, okay. Any other commissioners have comments or questions of staff? Stan, just where are we on mandatory hookups? I know there's a state law, I think we have a local ordinance. What we're doing up in Sebastian with the phase 1, I think we're given a 5-year window. So can you kind of summarize where we are and if that's being modified in here or how it all relates in?
Right. We're not addressing that in here. I mean, that is state law, and that's working out availability and other issues between really Department of Health and Utility Services in terms of if sewer is available, if there's a failure, can they connect, and that sort of thing. And then there's actual case-by-case circumstances, and that really gets to the availability issue of it. So nothing in here gets to that, and I don't think that we have to have a policy one way or the other in the comprehensive plan on that. That is, I mean, there are regulations and there are requirements. I'm not an expert on that law in terms of what the state requirement is. I just know that utility services and health department work together on it, and obviously the building department when there's an issue that goes. So there is law in place to follow on that. Okay. And in terms of, what the board's policy is on any particular project, whether the mandate connections or not, you would have that capability, yes or no, as you go through each project. Nothing in these policies would alter the board's ability to do that.
Okay, good. Thank you. At this point, if there's no more questions from commissioners, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this matter before us? Good morning.
Morning, Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting, and I'd like to ask the council a question before I say anything. As being a member and vice chair of the Permitting and Development Committee, if this comes before the committee, would I be advised not to speak at this time?
No, I'm fine with your public speaking here today.
Okay. I think that any time that we have a choice to hook up to public sewer instead of septic, I think my mic just went off.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comments, sir. Next.
He has been known to do that.
It's the trap door you got to watch out for.
Oh.
Great having all these little buttons up here, Joe. It's
But I think that the main concern, and I think that we would have some comments if it came up before the committee, would be on the financial end of it, on the cost factor. And as County Attorney Reingold can recall, a couple years ago we had a hearing to where I represented the client, and it was because of the location of where the sewer was located to where we had to bring it to the site. But in the LDRs, we were close enough, so we were mandatory to hook up to it. We were looking at a $40,000 cost for a single-family home. So it didn't make sense, so we had to go to septic in order to make it financially feasible. So I think the financial end of it would be the thing that I would be most concerned with at this time. Other than that, I would have no objection to any time we could hook up to public sewer instead of septic. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stan, we do have, if we do come in with a sewer project like we did up in Sebastian, we do offer 5 or 10 year financing for some of the assessment costs. And I like how we did the hookup thing with the 5 year with the front-loaded incentive to encourage people to sign up soon, but a decrease in incentive over time. And then in the 5th year, there's no incentive. So I think just going forward, I like that model quite a bit. I think it's fair to the homeowner because it helps them out and gets them hooked up. But at the same time, if we're going on that priority list, these are areas we know that are having a negative impact on the lagoon, and so we do want to get them off the septic. So anyway, to Mr. Paladin's concerns about the financial aspect of it, I think we do that each time we look at the financing options and stuff. So, okay. I did have I think commissioners, we all got an email from Judy Orcutt, I guess late last night. I don't know if y'all had a chance to read that yet, but I'll pass this down, and if you could give it to the clerk to enter her comments into the record, please. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on this? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing on the sanitary sewer sub-element. Commissioners, any final comments on this aspect? Okay, then Stan, we will go ahead and move on to the element relating to the sea level rise.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a bit of background on this. The Comprehensive Plan Act and Florida statutes require all coastal counties to have a coastal management element. And we've had a coastal management element for decades as required by the state. One of the items in our coastal management element is a geographic definition, and we've mapped it out for many years. Our coastal high hazard area, that's the hazard area, the area below Category 1 hurricane storm surge line, and we've got that up to date, and we've been using that. And that actually becomes relevant in the sea level rise policies that are proposed, and I'll go into here in just a moment. In 2015, the state passed legislation, the governor signed, that requires that, among other things that we've already looked at in our coastal management element, flood risk in coastal areas from storm surge and high tide events and stormwater runoff, but also now to also look at related impacts of sea level rise. And although we reference sea level rise already in our coastal management element in consultation with the state, it was determined we really haven't evaluated it and addressed policies. So that's what we're proposing to do here. A couple of items that I did want to mention on this as I get into this. I wanted to point out especially a lot of good work from our environmental planner, Stephen Hitt, as well as Roland DuBois. It was a good team effort on this, putting this together. So this is the projections that, and we've referenced this in our item and actually in the text of the coastal management element. And there's quite a divergence. You can tell from this particular graph. We're down here at 2018, and you can see in some of the projections that are actually specific to Southeast Florida, it really actually starts in Indian River County and goes down into the Keys, looking at projections. And we've got some pretty good data on projections and share that with you, but you can look at the divergence in the projections as the further out in time that you get. What we chose to do was really look at what's the minimum, what's the maximum here that we'd be looking at in year 2060, and we picked 2060 for a couple of reasons. One is that's a pretty good benchmark. That's far out from right now, and in making any kind of resiliency type of improvements or capital improvement investments, that's pretty far out. So if we've got some projections that we can actually plan with that far out, that's a good marker. Also, you can see the projections, at least at this point in time, are really diverged once you get out beyond 2060, and I think aren't even beneficial for planning purposes. So we've looked at this particular projection, and again, they are specific to the Southeast Florida region, including up to Indian River County. So we're looking at, by 2060, A 34-inch sea level rise is the worst case scenario at this point. I did want to mention, as we did in our staff report, historically we've been experiencing sea level rise that's been documented since 1897. That's just part of whatever type of influences that have been going on for the last 120 years. Kind of averaged a little over a foot at different locations in the state, both on the west coast and north of us and down at the Keys as well. So one thing that we've noticed with all the projections, so if we've been getting, say, 12 inches, 13, 14 inches every 100 years, all the projections, even the more, quote, conservative ones, are showing some acceleration in that. So it's prudent to take a look at that. And in terms of what the type of mapping data that we already have and that Stephen helped kind of finalize for us, is looking at some sea level rise inundation scenarios, a 1 foot, a 2 foot, and a 3 foot rise. And this is using 2007 LIDAR data to look at elevations. And this is, you know, the ground as it was in 2007. A lot of areas that could potentially be affected are wetland areas or low-lying undeveloped areas along the lagoon, especially, and along the St. Sebastian River. So just in terms of this map, again, this is a projection, so we've got the purple is more likely in this scenario, and the orange or yellow is possible in there. But again, if you drill down and look at the particular areas that are affected, and I'll kind of summarize those as we go to 2 foot and then to 3 foot there, you can see that that the inundation scenario, a lot of the areas that were possible under 1 foot and 2 foot, under 3 foot, more of that area is, again, more likely. So we've got at least some good data for basic planning purposes that we can look at the areas that are affected.
Stan, those maps you just showed, that's not factoring in a storm occurrence.
That's correct. These are inundation. So this would be kind of what you would
Kind of a
expect.
daily inundation schedule.
Daily or kind of the average tide situation. That's correct. Storm surge would be above and beyond this.
Right, okay, thank you.
So if I can back out of this, there we go. Just to kind of get a little more look at two things now. If you look at the inundation scenario, 3 foot, again, which is actually a little bit beyond the worst case for 2060 for us. The coastal high hazard area, that storm surge for category 1, kind of safe line, that's in the clouded area here. So you can see, and I'm going to go through a few areas of the county. If we use that coastal high hazard area as our area for special planning purposes for sea level rise, we cover just about everything here. In some cases, we actually cover a little bit more. So it's a good sort of broad brush to use for the 3 foot inundation level. And this is the North County area here, kind of moving south a little bit. You can see the extent, again, of the clouded area is the coastal high hazard area, which we're recommending it become an adaptation area for planning purposes in terms of looking at development. And again, even though you're in the coastal high hazard area, we have a lot of development in there, they've elevated and they're well above roads and homes and units and development are well above what this scenario would play out. But again, as we go south here in the city of Vero Beach area, of course, they have their own sea level rise policies now or proposed in place themselves. And as we go down to the south, you can see that all the way down to the county line.
Stan, the other thing on that, has Indian River Farms or any of the drainage districts looked at what a 2 or 3 foot rise in the lagoon levels would do to their drainage capacity?
Right. I've mentioned that too, and so we've had some informal discussions. I've not seen any modeling, and I think that would probably be a next step. You know, these policies, this is our first kind of set of policies to go through for that, and I think that'd be one of the planning efforts probably over the next 5 years to see how that models out. Indian River Farms in particular, they've got structures at certain elevations, and you know what I've heard is under these scenarios, no, there'd be no change. In fact, you know, unfortunately, you get some, I guess you could say dry runs, maybe they're wet runs during Francis, during Jean, when we had, you know, elevations way up. Did it affect the system or not? But that would be something to look at, and that's not just Indian River Farms, obviously, that's the other districts as well. So I do think that would be a next step sort of thing to do.
Mr. Chair. Commissioner Zerk.
Stan, can you put the map back up, any one of those? So the people don't panic. How do we integrate this map with the reality of what was built, how much it was elevated that no longer sits in these illustrations?
Right, so if you were to drill down, and again, I would use this for planning purposes. I know first thing you want to do, right, is go look, where's my house? Where's my
Right.
friends? Right, that's the, but when you look at that, essentially what you would see, and I'll give you one that's a little bit more focused in, say, on the hospital area. You know, what you'll see is the developed areas are up out of this. I mean, and given our requirements for elevation, FEMA requirements and so forth that we enforce, you know, everybody's out of this that's doing any kind of development, certainly currently and within the last several decades. So if you drill down and you look at what these areas are, a lot of them are undeveloped lots, a lot of them are wetlands. In fact, 85% of our wetlands would get some type of impact from this. So that's what you'd see if you drilled down on it.
So somebody could come in and, well, if you know what your finished floor elevation is, you would
Sure.
subtract that from these projected
That's exactly right.
numbers, but the majority of things would still be
You're not going
high
to see,
and dry.
there's not much that's at, I don't know of anything that's built that's at 3.
Right.
You'd have to go pretty far south of here, which is where they're going to have more problems first. Broward and Miami-Dade. But that, again, like Commissioner O'Brien said, that would, if that's an inundation scenario, say by 2060, storm surge is going to be on top of that. So, you know, if the worst case plays out under the projections that we've looked at, you just add 3 feet to any event that you've experienced in 2060. That's what you got to get to. I think, you know, this is a starter for us, and I think these are good policies to start out. I think there's a lot more planning, and we've got some target dates in here in the policies to get to. I think projections should be a lot better, say, in 3, 4, 5 years as well. And I think the county needs to continue to update, you know, when we get new data on projections, you know, to factor that in. But 2060 is pretty far out, and that's why we're looking far out, again, for resiliency, you know, no density increases, no special needs people in those areas, and looking at infrastructure. Some infrastructure investments you would want to make in those areas for resiliency. Some you'd say, nope, we should look at some other locations. So those are the types of decisions that I think would come out of these policies. Again, it gives you flexibility, but it gives you some ideas of what potential impacts you could be looking at. Again, I kind of explained the possible and more likely, and when you actually look at the impacts themselves, more than 85% of the coastal wetlands are at risk under the 3-foot sea level rise scenario, especially the estuarine wetlands, of course. And so really the adaptation, whatever degree of sea level rise we see and at whatever rate, it'll be not only humans, of course, that are adjusting to it. You know, ecosystems will have to adjust and will adjust as well. But in looking at critical facilities, we have no existing critical facilities substantially impacted under any of the scenarios, including the 3-foot. But we do believe that it's prudent to designate that coastal high hazard area as an adaptation action area and to have some policies that come out of that. And a few of those, and one is just kind of generally the objective here to adopt, implement, and pursue strategies that increase resiliency and protect property and infrastructure from sea level rise impacts. And some of the policies that would help us get there is to sort of drill down next step and identify at-risk facilities and factor in our capital improvements planning as we go forward with capital improvements planning. And you know, you all see that the updates every year to now make that a factor that we look at with facilities. It doesn't mean you won't invest in that coastal high hazard area, but you want to make sure that you're planning ahead for that. Considering those impacts whenever we have a major comprehensive plan update, which again, probably around 2022 after we get census data would be the best time to do another major update of the comprehensive plan. Also to keep track of the projections, we'd have a policy for periodically doing that. And then coordinating with the municipalities on any strategies that they have. Makes sense that we would work together on that. And again, one of the policies, and I think this is a main planning tool here, is to use the coastal high hazard area as the adaptation action area, and to use that. We've got it mapped. We've had it mapped for a long time. It's quite available. And then to do a few things in that particular area, and that's to limit public expenditures unless it's got planning for resiliency and long-term use, to prohibit special needs facilities, which we already do, such as assisted living facilities in the coastal high hazard area, and to not increase land use densities. We already have that, but here we've got in the coastal high hazard for storm surge purposes, but here we'd be doing it for the sea level rise purposes. So those are just kind of a highlight of all the different requirements that we're looking at. Again, justification for doing the comp plan amendment in the first place. We have a substantial change in circumstances. One is we got a mandate from the state to do it, and we also have a growing body of evidence that it's likely that we'll have some acceleration in the sea level rise we've already been experiencing, say, for the last 120 years. Again, just to summarize, we've got policies and projections that would become part of our coastal management element for planning purposes, and to look at impacts under the kind of the 3-foot worst case scenario, and to keep pursuing those policies to address the impacts. The Planning and Zoning Commission took a look at this at their February meeting and voted 5-0 to recommend the board approve the transmittal. And again, Mr. Chairman, I think we've kind of wisely segregated this into 2 parts, so I'd be glad to answer any questions or any more questions on this part, and confess ignorance to most things that people want to know.
Stan, can you go back to the map that showed the coastal high hazard line?
Any particular area or just this one? But
the area that we just rezoned.
Yep.
It's out, I think.
Right. It's right here, and so it probably follows very closely to that estuarine wetland line, and then the upland over here by A1A, be right about here where I'm pointing the cursor right now.
So,
because A1A is pretty high up in most places.
So we just, increased the density for that subject area.
We did not get a net increase in density, right? But yes, yeah. On the upland side, you would be able to do more, yes.
So my concern here is they come in, and build some homes there, and 25 years later, they're underwater. And they say, well, Indian River County, why did you permit this if you knew it was going to be underwater? We would get the blame for allowing them to build something at risk. So going forward, anything that comes, before planning or building department, do we need a disclaimer? Just something says, hey, by the way, you're in an area that could be impacted by future sea level rise, and build your house here at your own risk, kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I'll give my thoughts. That's a great kind of legal question. Any coastal community, the prudent thing to do is to plan for this, and that's what we're doing, and we're taking the first steps. There's just, like I was saying at the beginning, there's so much divergence in the projections right now, and then what's the life of the unit? Say if I'm, we're doing a 42-year projection right now. We're basing our planning off of that. So if you issue a permit and say, hey, your house was good for 30 years, what? This is the beginning of our planning for this. And I have a feeling that over the years, depending on how projections play out, FEMA requirements, elevation requirements are not going to be static. The latest building code already went 1 foot above freeboard, right, what the minimums are. So I could see, 10 years from now, FEMA may say, well, there's another foot. So I think development is actually going to probably evolve as well as time goes on, depending on how these projections really start to play out. That's kind of my 50,000-foot view. I don't know legally what the suggestion would be there.
No, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Stan. I mean, if you're going to be developing in the coastal community, in the coastal areas, there's so many different things that people are going to be needing to be worried about. Hurricanes, floods. I mean, there's just so many things to warn somebody about. I think in that regards, I think a lot of the regulatory side of it versus the comp plan side of it's really going to kick in, whether from a state or federal level, that are essentially going to put the requirements or restrictions on folks.
Yeah, and just, I've heard a lot of people complain, like their roof or something, and it was like, well, okay, county, you guys inspected it and signed off on the permit. How could you do that kind of thing? And I just feel that I won't be here, but, you know, some future commissioner will be sitting here and someone will say, well, you know, why did Commissioner Flesher permit you guys to build here in this sea level rise area and tarnish his legacy? I mean, we're doing.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about you, you know, on your behalf, Commissioner.
You're not leaving anytime soon, though.
Now, of course, Commissioner Adams way out there in Fellsbury, you don't have to worry about this too much, so.
I'm sitting pretty.
Yeah. Okay, so we will, any other questions or comments of staff? Commissioner Zark.
Stan, if you could put that map back up, I don't think the property that we just looked at actually is in the shaded area. To me, it's, right, it is actually.
Right, it's a little bit short. In other words, it's not even in the coastal high hazard area. It's kind of that upland area, which again, A1A is at a pretty high elevation,
Right.
you know, 15 feet or what have you. So you've got area, yeah, there are whole areas down in here that aren't even part of the coastal high hazard area.
The other question was, nothing against Key West, Cedar Key, or Fernandina Beach. But what would it cost us to track our numbers locally for our county at some, go to Public Works or Surveying World and say, where should we monitor what's happening with our local sea level rise? Because you know, you'd see, some of these look like they've gone, you know, they go up, they go down. There's a trend clearly to the upside a little bit. But some of these years you have it dropping, you know, 1927, you have it dropping nearly, it's hard to say, you know, 9 inches to a foot, went down.
Yeah.
I doubt it went down that much, but maybe it did. And in 1997 in Fernandina, you've got, you know, a shift of looks like probably 6 inches, and in 87, looks more like an EKG than a flood, you know, a measuring of elevation. But what would it cost us, or would that something we bring back? I'd like to know what happens here. It's good to know what happens other places, but I'm more concerned with what happens here locally. And does that compare and does that match up with the other data?
A few comments. I wouldn't want to try to become the global expert or task anybody with that here, you know, locally here. I think we've got some good efforts that are going on north and south of us that would give us a good regional look at it. And you're right, a couple of other points. I think I relearned again, looking at this information, how short-term changes are not good basis for long-term trends at all. I mean, we see this in a lot of areas of life, including, you know, seasonality and smaller climate cycles that are going on. We've actually had a cycle, as I understand it, in the last 5 years that's really bumped up sea level rise, but it's a 20 or 30 year cycle that's within, so you can't really just look at even looking at a 5 year period of time is not going to give you. That's why I wanted to look back to 1897 and look at what we've actually had documented, 3 places in Florida that are kind of around, you know, where we are, and go from there. So I think we should rely on, for planning purposes, you know, some of the regional efforts that are going on north and south of us. I don't think we could, and it probably wouldn't make sense for us to do one locally. Although I will say that what's good about our region here, that impact should be similar for us, but it's going to be different, as I understand it, in a lot of different parts of the world. Worst case scenario kind of in the south is over at the Louisiana, Mississippi coast, where you've got, you know, you've cut off sediment from the Mississippi River for centuries now, and you've got subsidence of land as well as relative sea level rise. So their rates are maybe 2.5 or 3 times what Southeast Florida could experience if the subsidence continues like they think it will. So different areas of the country will be affected differently. So I think, you know, my best thing is hang your hat on what the pros north and south of us are doing, and that's good enough for us for planning purposes.
Right, and we don't go back to 1897, but our family does go back to 1914. And after doing a lot of extensive research and surveying and reviewing data, if you're looking at 1970 to 2017, and just to the south of here, we did not experience a foot rise during that same 104-year period.
But sounds like a good real estate thing to come up with. Hey, we didn't experience it here. Maybe.
Right. So it's I'm always more comfortable with us doing our own numbers than taking somebody else's numbers, especially when then you have, you know, a foot drop in the sea level. I think that'd be pretty noticeable. Probably would have made the newspapers. But
I'd think a tsunami was coming or something if I saw a drop.
That's right. Well,
We are
we're all
tsunami
set for
ready, aren't we?
We are, we have a tsunami
tsunami
plan.
plan, right. Okay, I'm done beating up this issue.
We will now open for public comment. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on the sea level rise aspect of the comprehensive plan?
And Stan, as Bob Johnson comes down from Coralwind subdivision,
How'd you know that?
does the public hearing that Commissioner O'Brien just opened cover both 10A,
subdivision.
I've just missed.
10A2 and 10A3? Was that the concept, or are we having a separate one for 10A3?
I think this is for 10A3, and then there might be one motion at the end for the transmittal hearing. Yes.
Okay, so just wanted to make sure. So we're definitely opened up the public hearing on both.
Yeah, aren't we combining 2 and
Yep,
3
I
here?
just wanted the public to be clear on that.
Mr. Johnson?
I would recommend that we had a very good discussion this morning. There are still a lot of ifs. 1 foot in 100 years. My suggestion would be to table the discussion, have some further formal discussions with the inland waterway management districts, some other folks besides yourself, and table this till and review it for over the next year, and come back and work on it now. This is there's no immediate crises for getting this out at this particular time. At least so far, we haven't heard that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan.
And there was some legislation that requires us to update our coastal element.
That's correct, and we actually have to until October of this year to have policies in place that address sea level rise. So we do need to move forward on this. But I understand the concern, and I think where we are right now, we're early on in our planning, and so whatever we do for sea level rise resiliency actually at this point in time really matches up with what we're doing to try to protect from storm surge. So, you know, if these resiliency improvements, if sea level rise, it plays out, it's just 12 inches every 100 years, then we haven't wasted any effort by making ourselves more resilient for storm surge. But if we start seeing things play out south of here where they're more vulnerable, south of here meaning Broward and Miami-Dade, not only will we have hopefully some of the benefits of what they're going through, we'll see a lot more of their people up here as well.
I just, to Mr. Johnson's concern, I think this is just a transmittal hearing, so we do have time for comments and more discussion, and it'll come back to us for a final public hearing. Jason?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thanks. Yeah, I just think it goes along with planning for storm surges. I mean, we've seen that. I'll go back to 2004, Hurricanes Francis and Jean. Fire Station 2 over on the river was inundated with river water. We built a new station in about 2005, 2006 timeframe. We elevated it because it made sense to elevate it. So I think a lot of this makes sense from a standpoint of planning for storm resiliency, and that's just really a mechanism to make sure that our infrastructure and our development plans for those times, even if there weren't to be this 1 foot or more of sea level rise. So I think it's just smart planning to continue doing that in those coastal high hazard areas. They're already today called coastal high hazard areas. So that's without regard to anything rising in the future. So I think, and we need to plan for that eventuality that if it does occur when we're doing new development, that new development needs to be built. When you're building a new fire station or a new home or a new structure, you need to plan for that to be a 30, 40, 50-year structure. So if you're building something in 2018, you need to be worried about 2048 or so. So I think it's just good planning from that standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to comment on this? Okay, seeing none. So commissioners, if what I understand from staff, we are kind of combining 10A2 and 10A3 into one vote. Staff is recommending that we move forward with the transmittal of the amendments and proposed wording And that'll be for both the sanitary sewer sub-element and the coastal management element related to sea level rise. Is that correct, Stan and Dylan and the clerk? Everybody's good? Okay. Commissioners?
I move approval of the transmittal of both elements.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any final comments on the motion before us?
Well, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Flesher.
Yes, I just want to go back because the county administrator brought up the element of hurricanes and predictability as a comparative element. And, you know, each year we look at predictions of hurricanes and we hear there are 11 named storms coming and we have 5 hurricanes. And as a county, we prepare for what those predictions are, and they're after models, and they're very strong suggestions and indicators on how our emergency management should be prepared and what we should do with our resources. But they're parameters and guidelines. And I'm very comfortable with looking at other studies that are available as a strong suggestion and indicator. I don't think that we should get into the weeds of creating more studies and additional burden to identify the unpredictability of years to come with sea level rise. I think that we should use the data that's available and go forward.
Okay, very good. Any other final comments from the commissioners or the public on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 4-0. We'll go ahead and have the county attorney read the public notice items, and we'll take a brief break. So, Dylan, if you would do the honors on public notice.
Absolutely. We have a notice of scheduled public hearing for April 3rd, 2018. This will be Ocean Trail LLC's request for vacation of the Hideaway Cove subdivision plat. This will be legislative in nature. Again, that will be April 3rd. Also, a scheduled public hearing for April 3rd, 2018 will be Ocean Trail LLC's request for abandonment of the west 20 feet as shown on additional right-of-way dedication on the plat of Hideaway Cove subdivision. This will also be legislative in nature. So both of these public hearings will be scheduled for April 3rd, 2018. With that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Dylan. And with that, we're going to take a brief break. We'll be back at 10:45.
And the focus is actually a wheel.
Oh, okay.
It's that easy.
That's better.
Okay.
Okay. Nice.
And that's
nice.
So it's autofocus with the zoom.
a lot of features, but really you don't need much. It's just it's a pain getting it.
Noticed, I just.
Good eye, good eye.
You don't want
Yeah.
anybody
sitting right there, you just pick it up and.
So that's all there is to it. I'll send out an email.
Okay.
And if you want to come in and take a look.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's easier.
It's great, thanks.
If I may.
Stuff here just.
Arm for beer. Turn that light down. That light was shining on everybody. It's down now. Well, just turn it down before it was turned up. We rarely use the thing anyway. It's just a.
Wow, you look sharp. So you're gonna put the kid in?
Done with the zip line. Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking that.
You could have come. I know.
At least at the board meeting.
All right, thank you.
Scott, do you know if you did the old monitors?
The ones that were on the walls.
Any of these?
Yeah, we still have it. They're all over in the server room in Building B. But I don't know anything about that. Who did you speak to? Okay. Yeah, Jason. Yeah, I don't know how that would work. It would be. It would have to go through the surplus process through purchasing, and everything would still need to be cataloged. I know we haven't gone that far. But follow up for sure. I know there's a surplus process that, but there.
There's always a process for everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of equipment. I mean, probably $100,000 worth of audio-visual equipment that got tore out of here.
Oh, really? Man.
I don't know where it's going to go, but it's, I'm sure it's got to be cataloged and
Oh, yeah. This,
purchasing.
I guess this works this one.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
You can advance the slides any way you'd like. I got a remote control, too.
I'll probably just use the little arrow keys.
There you go.
I'll keep it simple.
I'll do the switching here, but
Okay.
There are some
it's
county commissioners have a strong mayor, elected directly.
pretty nice system we have here now.
Voted
Looks like.
commissioners.
I would demonstrate, they're not supposed to be sitting on
Chairman likes to be prompt. All right. You know, there must be something different going on somewhere else because every
We will come back to order. There's no county administrator matters. We'll move on to departmental matters. Under Public Works is a final update on the pilot plant study for a full-scale managed aquatic plant pollutant removal system treating water from the North Relief Canal. And Keith, good morning, our stormwater manager. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, the purpose of the meeting here is to give you the sort of summarized results of our year-long study of treating water out of the North Relief Canal. Is the sort of the final regional treatment system that'll be treating waters on the 3 main relief canals with Indian River Farms Water Control District. And I've got a little PowerPoint that we'll go through to just try to highlight some of the major stuff of the study here. What we did initially, okay, here we go. The basic project, we had 4 stages in the study. The first one was site selection and preliminary water testing and constructing the facility. And some of this we went over in the previous update when we were about halfway through the study. And then the second part, we were actually running water through the 2 pilot systems we set up. We were comparing an algal turf scrubber type pilot plant with what we call a low energy aquatic plant system, or a LEAP system, which consisted of water lettuce scrubbers, followed by an algal flowway, and then followed by a wetland treatment system. And we ran those for several months to compare the results of the treatment removal from each system. Turned out the LEAP system outperformed the algal turf scrubber pilot plant. And so in stage 3, we focused the rest of the study as far as pumping water out of the canal and continuing the pilot plant with the LEAP system, where we tried to optimize performance and stuff with it. And then the final stage was a preliminary design report, which we've received from the consultants that were doing the pilot plant study. And some of the basic findings we found, and some of this was reported in the earlier presentation as well, but the majority of the nitrogen we found in the canal, the North Relief Canal, is in the organic form, which means it's real difficult for plants to pull it out of the water. And it turned out on the yearly average of the study, it was about 78.1% of the nitrogen present was the organic type. The majority of phosphorus, however, was orthophosphate, or orthophosphorus, which was almost 71%, and that's easy for plants to pull out of the water column. And because of the low available nitrogen for plants, it's sort of, you consider the water in the canal nitrogen limiting, which means that the plants would have more potential to pull phosphorus out if there was more nitrogen available to them. So that's sort of a limitation on how much phosphorus we would be able to remove easily. And then the nitrogen and phosphorus levels vary in the canal, similar to they do at Egret Marsh Stormwater Park, where we pull out of the lateral D canal. And we found that typical for all 3 relief canals during our water quality study that we've been doing ongoing. That's up and down throughout the year. And then the final one here was suspended solids in the canal are very low. Even right after the hurricane came through in October or whenever it was, the solids were fairly low, and most of the time when we did detect them, it was less than 15 milligrams per liter. Some of the later findings after we focused more solely on the LEAP system are on this slide. And like I said earlier, the LEAP system outperformed the algal turf scrubber system, both when you measured the water quality based on water quality measurements of in versus out, or based on the removals from harvested plant materials. You know, we did it both ways, and in both instances it outperformed at least the Egret Marsh algal turf scrubber on a per square meter basis. And continued testing reveals that as with their water lettuce tanks, which was the first tanks in the LEAP system, as you would expect, they were receiving a higher nutrient load, so they pulled out more of the nutrients than the algae, which was downstream, and which pulled out more than the wetland system, which was downstream, just because of the location in the system, because each subsequent treatment train is getting less nutrients to deal with. And one of the reasons we put the water lettuce in front was because it just, from a common sense standpoint, looking in the canals and seeing how well that stuff grows, it just was a logical decision to let it be the primary treatment unit in the system. But also, when there is suspended solids present in the water, in an algal system alone, you have a lot of deposition of the suspended solids and other things on the algae that's growing in the system, and it tends to coat the algae and reduces the growing ability of the algae because it's blocking a lot of the sunlight. So in this system here, we look more at the algal system as certainly it's not the main removal mechanism, that's the water lettuce, but we look at it more of a reoxygenation unit and as a polishing unit to the water coming off the water lettuce scrubber. We measured removals based on aerial removal rates, which is typically measured in grams per square meter per year. And what that means is for every square meter of water surface you have in whatever tank you're looking at, we measured the grams of nitrogen or phosphorus that were being removed on a yearly basis. So you get a number that's grams per square meter per year. And with nitrogen, that was pretty consistent whether we used a water quality-based analysis or a harvest-based analysis. And the phosphorus aerial removal rates were a little higher using water quality analysis than the harvest calculations. And it's hard to say. That could be just because of bugs and stuff coming and going, taking phosphorus with them, or pieces of plant material sloughing off and missing our collection system and stuff. And then with the hurricane hitting, we were unable to pump out of the canal for several weeks, but because of the flatness of the system and not having a slope system, both the algal crop and the water lettuce survived long-term with really no detriment to the crop, which is good, because in a regular algal turf scrubber, we would have lost the crop completely. And
if you go back one slide.
There.
So when you did the comparison between the LEAPs and our traditional system that we have in place, is that using the same volume of water going through each system in a parallel comparison to where you're looking at
right, yeah,
scaling up the...
Yeah, for the pilot plant, we had the two systems set up, and each system was pumped 5 gallons per minute. Okay. And so it was in the same source, same volume and flow rate.
So then you've got a really good...
Right, best we could get, yes.
Right, okay, thanks.
All right. This slide is just showing aerial removal rates through the different systems. And as you can see, the numbers decrease as you go down because you're taking that food source away from the downstream units. But the water lettuce tanks in both nitrogen and phosphorus, for the aerial removal rates, their numbers were higher than the algal turf scrubber at Egret Marsh, which was interesting. And then this slide is an update of what you had in your handout. It's more of a like a better step toward a preliminary design that we're working on. And it's not showing up very well. Do you have does this thing have a pointer or something? Okay, here we go. Where the little hand is. At the very top, the two big basins, or the two water lettuce scrubbers. The North Relief Canal will be on the right-hand side of the paper where the little hand is. We would be pumping out of the canal from the northwest corner of the property. And this corner, our property, by the way, is 12.8 acres, I think, or excuse me, it's 18 point something acres that the county purchased recently. It's an old grove. It's at the corner of the North Relief Canal and the 60 or 74th Avenue, I believe, with the another lateral B canal in Indian River Farms Water Control District. So we'll be pumping out of the North Relief Canal, splitting the flow equally to these two water lettuce scrubbers. Then it will flow down into two algal re-aeration or polishing units, number 1 and number 2, that are both equally sized. It'll get split equally between those guys, be collected in a trough, and then it goes to almost a 2-acre final settling and polishing wetland, and then it'll be sent out to the canal for discharge into the lagoon. Every so often, fairly regularly, actually during the summer months in particular, we'll need to harvest the water lettuce out of both of these units. And so on the left-hand side, we've got a couple composting pads where we'll harvest the lettuce, mix it with the algae that we harvest out of the solids, or out of the algal turf scrubbers here, and add some hay, probably chopped hay or something, and try to make compost and produce a usable byproduct. And that's sort of where we're at with the snapshot of the site right now. And actually, one of the purpose of this meeting is to request the Commission's approval to go ahead with final design of the system based on the results of the power plant, of the pilot study, and our initial thoughts with the view in the PowerPoint here, knowing it'll be refined a little bit as we get into it. And then the final slide shows some of the projected nutrient removals. And these numbers are a little bit different, I think, maybe in the than what you had in the original handout, because of the overall areas of the basins changed, but they're within reason. So we'll probably have around 9,000 total pounds of nitrogen per year we're estimating to be removed, and around 1,500 pounds of phosphorus per year removed from the LEAP system. And the anticipated flow rate will probably be about 10 million gallons per day, but we are going to use variable speed pumps, which would give us the ability to crank it up or down as we find what the sweet point is during the different growing seasons from a flow perspective for these plants. And also will give us the ability to shut the flow off at night really easy because of the flat system, and still keep the plants alive if we determine that the night removal rate for the nutrients doesn't justify the power costs to keep water flowing through there. So that's really about all I've got in my presentation. If we have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, Commissioners. Commissioner Zark?
In the beginning, you mentioned that the source of the nitrogen, is this more, I think you said it's more organic?
Most of it is, yes.
So that would mean it's from upstream naturally decomposing items, or is it fertilizer, or is it, like what, when you say nitrogen, but where did it originate from?
Yeah, we really didn't look into that at all. We were just analyzing what was coming to us as far as trying to trace sources. We didn't do that.
Because there may be some benefit if it was a particular type of nitrogen origin. Is it from something that's fertilizer related or something else that we could look upstream and see if there's a big contributing factor that might be able to change some practices to it. Secondly, as you probably remember, down on your outfall from your polishing pond back into the district's canal, we'll have to make sure that's hardened real well so we don't get that canal erosion.
Oh, right.
David, I'm sure will make sure you.
Oh, yeah, see, it keeps me in line with that.
He's a good guy. Great project. Thanks for moving it forward.
Thank you.
Oh, one last question. With the composting areas, if we're harvesting water lettuce on an ongoing basis, that's going to accumulate pretty quick. What kind of user source do we have for that compost material? Is there any users out there in the marketplace to, just to, you come and pick it up, you can have it, or some, because disposing of that could really add up considerably.
I think we can find some. I know there's some organic groves where at Ignorant Marsh we've accumulated time to time a large stack of stuff, and we've caught a couple of those guys up, and they bring their own trucks in, and we just load them and they haul it off. So we'll do something like that.
And it smells so great after it's been sitting there a while.
Well, yeah, we're hoping to get it off before that.
Quickly, right. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, Commissioners, staff is recommending that we move forward with the final design.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. Is there any discussion of the commissioners on the motion? Anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us?
I will just add, since Ed's out here in the audience, this will be design ready, so we may ask the legislature if this is something that they could fund come next legislative session. So.
Duly noted. Ed?
Right, we have applied for 2 grants, by the way. I forgot to mention that, with the Indian River Lagoon Council. I think the total excuse me, the total is around $750,000 for both. One was a $50,000 grant, and then the other was $700 or $750, something like that.
Okay. Good. All right, seeing no other discussion, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Thank you, Keith. Looking good and very excited to see that thing up and running, and
We'll give it our
Another homegrown project.
another project.
Thank you, Keith.
That moves us on to county attorney matters. Dylan, you're going to update us on the rail safety study, I understand.
Thank you very much. There's actually no need anymore for any action on this next item. I know I had submitted a proposed resolution to the board for approval, but the governor has approved the budget, which does contain the language directing OPAGA to examine high-speed rail. The study will examine a number of different safety issues relating to passenger rail, and they will provide their results. OPAGA will to the governor, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House by November 1st. Simply just want to thank Representative Grawl, Senator Mayfield for all their hard work, not just this year, but also last year, and moving forward our issues relating to Allboard Florida, Brightline, and any passenger rail that happens to come through the state of Florida, because I think what we've realized is that this is a statewide issue that definitely needs examination. We've merely highlighted some of the issues here in the Treasure Coast and South Florida with the most recent proposal. Just simply want to thank them, and other than that, there's really no action we need from the board today on this item.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. Moving on, there's no commissioner matter, so we move to special districts and boards. The Emergency Services District, approval of minutes of the meeting of January 16, 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Adam. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
And that passes 4-0. Second item is renewal of a letter of agreement for critical incident stress management consultation services. Do we have Tad here or John? Tad?
We have 2 chiefs. That's
Chief.
Tad Stone from Emergency Services District. This is just a renewal of an agreement that we have to provide the services. We've only expended about $200 in the past year for the program. And some of that has been not only with case management, but also coming to some of our meetings and participating in the process as we move forward.
Very good. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Move approval.
Motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Flesher to move forward with the renewal of the agreement. Anybody from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Tad. Third item is Fire Station number 14, bill of sale of utility facilities, water and sewer.
I will certainly let that motion stand.
Okay. We have motion from Commissioner Flesher, my apologies, seconded by Commissioner Adams for staff recommendation. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
And we now move to the Solid Waste Disposal District. The request to approve an agreement with Comtech Systems for communication equipment and testing at the landfill.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Adams. Any discussion? Any comment from the public? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 4-0.
Great presentation, Manchu.
Yeah, thank you, Himanshu. Commissioners, anything for the good of the public? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.